There are 30 teams who've previously played in the Premier League who start this campaign outside the top division. In this video, we're going to look at 7 former Premier League sides we think might make an interesting save on FM23. So here we are then, 7 former Premier League sides that we think could make an interesting FM23 save. If this is the sort of content you're interested in, please drop a sub on the channel, give the video a like and leave a comment below. Of course, we also stream over on Twitch 3 nights a week. The link is below in the description. Enough of the plugs, let's get into those 7 teams, shall we? Sheffield Wednesday are one of the oldest professional football clubs in the world. They have won the top division in England 4 times. They've won 3 FA Cups, 1 League Cup and 1 FA Community Shield, which makes them one of the most decorated clubs in English football. However, they last won the league title in 1930, the FA Cup in 1935, and it's still 30 years since they last lifted that League Cup trophy. In the first season of the Premier League, Sheffield Wednesday finished 7th. They also reached the final of both the FA Cup and the League Cup, which unfortunately they lost both of those matches to Arsenal 1-0. However, by the 1996-97 season, Wednesday were struggling and they were clinging on for Premier League survival. Sadly, the club were relegated all the way back to League One by 2003, and despite promotion back to the Championship 2 years later, off-the-field issues threatened the club's very existence. In 2010, the club faced winding up orders, and in 2012, former Portsmouth owner Milan Mandaric stepped in to buy the club. At this point, the Owls returned back to the Championship, where Milan Mandaric sold the club to the current owners, who've promised Premier League football by the time the club celebrated their 150th anniversary. Sadly, they missed out on that dream ticket in 2016 when they lost the playoff final to Hull, and they also lost the following season's playoff final on penalties against Huddersfield. At the point when football was suspended due to the outbreak of the COVID pandemic, Wednesday was sat 16th in the Championship. However, they were found guilty of breaching EFL spending rules and were awarded a 12-point deduction, which was later rescinded to 6 upon appeal. The club were relegated in 2021, and of course at the start of this campaign, will once again start the season in League One. So your job, if you choose Sheffield Wednesday, is to get out of League One, push back to the Championship, take the Owls back to the Premier League, where surely they belong. League Two side Swindon Town are one of only 3 one-season wonders as far as the Premier League is concerned. Swindon, of course, Barnsley and Blackpool are the others. Now, Swindon's story is an odd one. In 1989, the club were actually the 2nd team to ever record over 100 points in a league campaign. However, at the end of that season, Lou Macari left and was replaced by former Argentinian legend Ozzy Ardiles. Now, the club may well have won the 2nd division, but they were, however, found guilty of breaching 36 league rules with regards to illegal payments to players, and as such were relegated as far as the 3rd division. However, upon appeal, they stayed in the 2nd division. Ardiles eventually left the club in 1991 to go and take over at Newcastle, which meant the Swindon job was available, and that position was going to be filled by Glenn Hoddle as player manager. In his first season in charge, Hoddle just missed out on the 2nd division playoffs. However, the following year they beat Leicester City 4-3 in the newly rebranded Division 1 playoff final, which meant Swindon Town stamped their ticket to life in the Premier League. Life in the Premier League wasn't easy for Swindon. They amassed only 5 victories and actually conceded 100 goals, a record which remains unbroken to this very day. A succession of new managers, relegations and financial troubles, including the threat of 2 winding up orders from HMRC and another FA charge relating to ownership and funding, means that managing Swindon isn't necessarily an easy task. Queen's Park Rangers were one of the founding members of the Premier League back in 1992. However, their stay in the Premier League lasted only 4 years. They were relegated back to the 1st division, and in 2001, they were actually relegated once more. In 2011, though, they made a surprise reappearance back in the Premier League, having won the title in the Championship. But their stay in the Premier League was short-lived, and they returned back to the Championship 2 years later. They were promoted back to the Premier League for a 3rd time, beating Derby County in the 2014 playoff final. But we all know what happened next, don't we? Relegation once more, this time after only 1 season. QPR seem ripe for a rebuild. Money, of course, is always going to be a problem at QPR, but you're based in London, so attracting players probably isn't going to be too difficult. Making QPR a club that isn't the yo-yo club from the Premier League, however, that is where the challenge begins. Bolton Wanderers were one of 12 founding members of not the Premier League, but the Football League back in 1888. Yet despite being one of the oldest clubs in existence, they've never actually won a top division title. They have won 4 FA Cups though, the last of which came in 1958. It's been 10 years since we last saw Bolton in the Premier League. In 2014 they reached the League Cup final, and under Big Sam Allardyce they actually reached the UEFA Cup twice. That's right, Big Sam Allardyce's Bolton in Europe. However, 2 relegations in 5 years saw them play their football in League One by 2016. And despite promotion the following season, financial difficulties saw the club enter administration in May 2019 when they were relegated to the 3rd tier. Things got so bad for Bolton they were actually threatened with expulsion from the EFL and therefore potential extinction as a club. However, they were taken back over in August 2019. This didn't necessarily signify a return to those glory days, as they were actually relegated to League Two by 2020. They did, however, only spend 1 season in League Two and are back in League One at the very first attempt. When you think of Bolton, you might think of players such as Yuri Zorkaev, JJ Okocha, Ivan Campo, Fernando Hierro and Jussi Jääskeläinen. But they're a lifetime away from what currently runs around wearing a Bolton Wanderers shirt. That's not to say, however, that if you take charge, those glory days can't return and you can bring the international elite back to Bolton. Coventry City won the FA Cup final in 1987 against Tottenham Hotspur and still to this very day remains one of their greatest achievements in the club's 139-year history. They actually took part in the inaugural Premier League season with a squad that consisted of players such as USA international Roy Wegerle, upcoming exciting youngsters like Peter Love and Phil Babb, and mixed with journeyman striker Mick Quinn and journeyman striker Mick Harford and generally old goalkeeper Steve Ogrizovic. They actually finished 11th in 1998 in the Premier League, which remains their highest ever finish. But 3 years later, they were relegated after 34 years in the top flight. Now only Everton, Liverpool and Arsenal can say they've survived in the top division longer than Coventry. The club celebrated its 125th anniversary by narrowly avoiding relegation to the 3rd tier of English football, having just avoided administration the year prior. In 2012, Coventry were relegated to League One for the first time in 48 years. The following year, the club were placed into administration, and as everyone was moved out of the Ricoh Arena, the club were forced to play their home games at Northampton's Sixfield Stadium. In 2017, the club returned to Wembley for the first time in 30 years, beating Wycombe Wanderers in the semi-finals of the EFL Cup, and then going on to lift the trophy after beating Oxford United. This remains the only piece of silverware the club has won in the last 30 years. However, that moment is bittersweet, as the club are also relegated the same season. The club get promoted back to League One via the playoffs. However, they failed to reach an agreement with Wasps as to where they're going to play their home games, and actually reach an agreement with Birmingham City in 2019. Now, it might not sound like it, but there are some positives in the Coventry City story. In 2020, the club were crowned EFL League One champions and returned to life in the Championship. And as the club stepped out in the Championship for the first time in 9 years, they also stepped out at their own stadium. So there you go. All's well that ends well with Coventry City. Can you now take them back into the Premier League, playing in front of their own fans in their own stadium? Mark Hughes' Bradford City currently play in League Two, despite making their last appearance in the Premier League in the year 2000, a mere 77 years since their last appearance in the top flight. During their time in the Premier League, they actually reached the semi-finals of the UEFA Intertoto Cup. But while they were having success of sorts in Europe, life domestically wasn't so much fun, and they were relegated back to the Championship. As with most teams in this list, a succession of financial crises led to the club going into administration twice in 2 years before being relegated in 2004 and 2007, which of course leads us to where we are now, the 4th tier of English football. Now, they may well have got to a League Cup final in 2014, but life for the Bantams hasn't been much fun since. Where do we begin with Portsmouth? Former FA Cup winners in our lifetime, might I add, and FA Trophy winners in 2019. Portsmouth were playing UEFA Cup football back in 2009. However, these days, they play football in League One. They are one of only 4 clubs to have won all 4 divisions, an honour they share with Wolves, Burnley, Preston North End and Sheffield United. Trying to describe the off-field issues that Portsmouth have had over the last 10 years is probably a video all of its own, and quite a long one at that. But the fact that we're now considering them for a long-term save suggests to me that maybe, just maybe, Portsmouth might actually be on a relatively secure financial footing going forward. Seen as one of the favourites for promotion from League One, you're not going to have the players that we all loved from back in the day. You haven't got Carnu, you haven't got Jermaine Defoe, you haven't got Peter Crouch or Nico Cranchiar. You have, however, got Dane Scarlett, who's on loan from Tottenham, former Sunderland defender Denver Hume, Colby Bishop and Connor Ogilvie. Now, of course, no one's saying you should manage the club like Harry Redknapp did. Show Portsmouth some love. Show them some respect. Maybe one day, those Pompey chimes will ring again in the Premier League. Now, our final team is a team I've already touched upon in a previous video. The link, of course, is just above my head over here. Oldham Athletic are actually the first former Premier League side to play non-league football. Sadly, they were relegated from League 2 this year after a number of off-the-field incidents, including so many protests with the board. The fans basically had enough, the board have left, and they're now actually owned by a local consortium. They've tried former managers such as Paul Scholes and Harry Kewell and John Sheridan. This time, however, I think the job belongs to you. If you're like me and you fancy a bit of a non-league to glory save, Oldham Athletic is the one. You're starting the Vanarama National. The plan is get them back up into the Premier League. They were part of the inaugural Premier League season in 1992. Can you do it? Can you take Oldham back to the top flight? If you can, let me know, because I'll be trying. Whether I succeed or not is going to be a completely different matter entirely, but I will try. So there you are, everyone. 7 former Premier League sides that I think are going to make interesting saves in FM23. If this is the sort of content you enjoy, please make sure you give the video a like. Leave a comment below as well. Let me know if you're going to have a go at managing any of these teams. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon on the next one.